to tighten the tap and ensure that not many get a free hand of coming into your geographies. So there are plenty of levers available, and many of these levers I'm sure have been talked about by various panelists in the last 1.5 days. So this remains a key issue for UK as well. This is just the background. Most of you know about this. I'm not going to spend much time on this slide. This all started at least 3 years ago that we've been fighting this case for. And the problem was that the earlier Prime Minister, James Cameron, made a pre-poll promise, not just in his last term, but last to last term, which never got fulfilled, and it's still not fulfilled. And because of that, he lost his job in some sense, because of Brexit and so on and so forth. So you've lived through all of these changes, so I'll not spend time. Let me get on with what the thinking behind this whole policy changes are at the London, with Home Office, with MAC. We met with them many times. So this is the matrix that MAC or Home Office looks into. So they've created this 3x3 matrix. They say that people come here for work, study, and for family reunification purposes. And then there are 3 segments. One is British people going out. That also contributes towards net migration in a way. And they say, as far as British box is concerned, not many people are going out of UK. That is also a cause of problem. And then you have other 2 blocks, which is about EU and non-EU, and we figure ourselves out in the non-EU block. So the choices for them were extremely limited. By March this year, or when the announcement came through, UK technically could only tinker with the box which is non-EU, because they are still part of EU and they cannot do anything about people coming in from the various European Union countries, because being part of the European network. So we got what we got, and we'll spend some more time on those restrictions. But the clear mandate MAC gave to the Home Office was make it costlier for people coming in, and that probably would be a good point for many companies being forced to hire local, just because you make it costly for people coming in from outside the European Union to work in the UK. For EU, what has happened, and it's mostly talked about in press these days. The whole this jing bang about UK referendum, leaving EU, etc., this is still playing out, and we'll spend some more time on Brexit as well and get your views. I have a question for you later, but today UK has triggered its policy action on both of these blocks to be able to curtail people coming in by making it costly for non-EU and getting the referendum done and moving out of EU. That is still, part of the process. How it will happen, how it will pan out, when will Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty get triggered, nobody knows. Some say in March. My own personal feeling is it will take at least a new UK election before Article 50 actually gets triggered. But that's my view. So, but why we say this is 3x3 matrix is because all of these 3 horizontals that you see actually are connected with all the 3 verticals. So this is the blocks, or these are the limitations that UK knew that they have to work with, and you see the policy action on both the counts, what you've seen unfold in last almost 10 months. So how many people do we get on ICT visa is a good question. Most of you know this, but some of you may not, but it's just to put things in perspective. On an average, on ICT visa over the last 6 or 7 years, the average is about 25,000. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it comes down. And the dark color bar over here is a longer term ICT, and in 2009 it was not long term or short term, so all you have is clubbed together in the light color box. But the latest figures are still in the region of about 30,000 or so that we've seen from MAC, and it is fairly easy to assume that about 90% of these visas actually go to India. And within that 90% also would mean that it goes to most of your companies and Indian tech companies. Now you may be wondering that this is a number which is just so small when the whole, the larger number that we look at is about more than 330,000 at the moment. And we're just talking about 30,000 visas over here. But these 30,000 primary applicants also take families with them. So dependent visas, et cetera, So ballpark numbers, if you were to ask me, for ICT would be in the region of about 100,000 or so, including dependents. And 200,000 is the share of the EU workers. So obviously EU is a bigger pie, sending in people in EU, in UK, sorry. And so we've seen, some of the MAC recommendations. We are living through this, so I'll not spend much time on this. But I guess key things that we need to sort of keep in mind over here is that they extended the minimum experience from 1 year to 2 years. We are still evaluating whether this is my violation of GATS agreement and the UK's commitment. The other recommendation was that they will start asking for more paperwork, like the US does or the Canada does. We've not heard from our member companies that this is the case today, but that will be my question to my co-panelists, and probably they'll be able to shed more light. And the last item that you see on the block was something that we fought tooth and nail with the UK Home Office. They wanted to separately carve out category for Indian tech companies, so-called Indian tech companies, and we fought hard to make sure that we are not carved out as a separate punching bag on which you can impose restrictions as and when you feel like. So I think we were successful in making sure that we remain part of the ICT, because that's what we do, and we are sending specialists, even though our specialists are only getting paid £40,000 a year, and not equivalent of a Honda or a Toyota boss who's being paid almost £200,000 a year when in the UK. But these are still specialists, and technology works like that. It's not a brick and mortar company, it's all about individuals. So we were able to convince Home Office that this is going to be extremely a painful decision if you were to take this one, and we will be left with no option but to retaliate in form and in kind. So some of those threats worked, and we remain part of the overall larger picture of ICT domain. You guys are paying these fees, so I guess there's no point in spending more time on this. They have made it costlier, £1,000 for skill surcharge. Again, we are evaluating whether this is in violation of existing GATS commitment. Prima facie, it looks it does, but none of the cases have been taken to WTO courts at the moment. We are currently also working on the US WTO case, still trying to find evidence to be able to have a foolproof case. And it is becoming extremely difficult as the days go by, because some of those data points actually do not exist in the public domain. And hence we are challenged with the lack of evidence on our file. So it's easier to say, sort of say that, we can take you to the courts, but these norms, the commitments at WTO are extremely subjective. It's very difficult to prove your case in Geneva that this is in violation of the existing commitments, because those existing commitments are extremely subjective and are open for interpretation. So these are the challenges that we face while working through this case. £200 is your health surcharge. So all in all, £1,200 per year is an additional fee that we are all paying. In addition, you've seen the salary levels go up by 37% from this cutoff date, and boy, they chose an awful bad time when the UK PM was about to land, and they enacted that. And we told the High Commission that you've made a terrible choice, and I think some would agree that it sort of killed the whole over-enthusiasm of UK Prime Minister visit to India. And you've seen, not much agreements came through. The whole undertone played by both governments was pretty submissive. It was not about, yes, we will forge a partnership, etc., etc. But on the sidelines, the good news is during the deliberation with the UK PM, India and UK have agreed to set up a strategic working group to negotiate the FTA, which will be between India and the UK alone. But assuming that UK gets itself out of the EU, so only then the FTA negotiation, the formal negotiation can kick through, not before that. God knows when it will happen. But the working group has been set up, so we'll be contributing on the services side. There's a separate group for goods side. So a couple of meetings on this working group have already happened. We've given your feedback on behalf of all of you, what we want from UK, and obviously it is for a lasting solution on this mobility issue. So that's about it. But before I sort of, hand it over to both my co-panelists, I guess it would be fair to ask, is the machine receiving this? It's not going on the next slide. Could you just put on the next one, which should be the last one? Yeah. And Jake, we had a question also for our audience. So you heard about Brexit. I just wanted to get your sense on how much is that you know about Brexit. There's been a lot of talk of whether it will be a soft Brexit or a hard Brexit. So I do want to get your views on what do you think will it be for the UK? Will it be soft or hard? This polling happening now?
Yes, poll is happening.
Okay. Okay, I guess the answer is clear. Can you just raise your hands, soft Brexit? Very good. Not many. Because I spend a lot of time in Brussels as well and picking their mind games, and they're truly mind games playing on, the Germans and the Frenchies don't want to let go of the Brits easily. And they've said publicly, we'll make them pay through their nose. It's easy for UK to say, we want to be part of the EU single market program. The US said, it cannot happen unless until you allow our people to come in as part of the single market. And this is an issue which will not be easy to negotiate. Brussels is in no mood to let go of London easily, because if they let go of London easily, they will be carving out a grave for their own selves, because it will lead to the collapse of the EU institution in itself if they allow an extremely large member to go scot-free and without paying a price. So they will have to pay a price, and that price would be extremely hard for UK to digest, make no mistake about it. But again, it brings us back on the same point that the extreme battles that you see playing out globally in the global arena today are actually being fought on this very topic about people mobility, immigration, migration, or what have you. So this is an extremely sensitive topic. Governments have collapsed. Prime ministers in prisons have resigned on this very issue. So today, for most of the developed economies, even though they have a shortage, even though they know their demographic challenges, they know they cannot fill up the gaps that they have in the existing systems today, and it can only be filled by bringing in more people from outside. But the political compulsions are such that they can't do anything about it, and they have to put in more restrictions. I'm afraid, that's the kind of world that we live in today. So I'll just, stop over here, and I'm happy to take any questions. When I came in, a lot of our colleagues told me that there's questions not just for UK, but also for US and other geographies. Because I'm here, I'm happy to answer any question that you may have, even though this is a UK topic. Before I hand it over to my co-panelists, a question that I have for both of you is, you know what's going on. Brexit will not be triggered in next 5 months. and it will take 2 years after that to actually happen. But if this lingers on, and that's my assessment that this will linger on, a Brexit may not be triggered in next 1.5 years or so, which will mean that we will have to live with more uncertainty. And UK will have no other option but to tighten the control on the block that it can tighten, which is the non-EU block. So how are you as companies preparing for this uncertainty to play out over a longish period of time? Kiran, let's start from you.
I agree, Gagan, that the combination of delay in Brexit and the possible tighter controls on ICTs is a deadly combination, right? I mean, we have seen and we've heard in the sessions earlier also that Indian IT companies are always a soft target. You want to build a wall, we are there. You want to help in reducing the net migration, we are there type. So we are mostly in the wrong place, but doing the right things. But having said that, I think it brings a lot of back to the planning in terms of how far can you think in planning, right? Because already with the cap being hit on 5 days, you already moved your planning to 18 months in advance in the US. Very difficult for a industry which works on just-in-time types of projects. So I think this is going to also happen in UK. We're going to have a very difficult balance to be maintained. Thinking that, okay, now the controls are coming in, there's a, as you rightly said, last week they made some changes, increasing the salary and stopping the skill transfer, and we are expecting more as per the MAC recommendation. We are already in, from an HCL perspective, planning, saying that, okay, let's assume the worst case scenario and start planning for it. While you could get some odd benefit of if you don't complete 1 year, you could still pay 73,000 and get away with it. But those are all soft benefits. They're not going to help us much. I think the need of the hour, not only in UK but across, is to relook at the whole workforce that every company has. I think gone are the days of where you will probably end up landed resources at 90% and locals at 10%. I think gone are the days. We've discussed at length on Singapore. We know what's happening in US. We know what's happening everywhere else. I think the shift which is needed, and I think there's going to be a need for a speed in changing that workforce and changing that workforce drastically. But if you want to do that, where will you get the talent, right? You should either get a British or you should get an EU. But you get an EU national, you always are trying to figure out whether he'll be available for the next 1 year or 2 years. Are technical graduates available? Are ENIA graduates available? So I think it's going to make it very difficult. So the plan that at least HCL is looking at, saying let's take small baby steps, take 6 to 8 months of planning that we need there, see how much of impact is there, and then probably go back to the drawing table if really going to impact earlier than what we envisaged. So that's how we're looking at it. Anuj?
Yes, and this seems to be a key thing coming in all the sessions, and I'm going back to the keynote session which we had, where we are talking about things moving more from an silo orientation of immigration to a more workforce management solutions which organizations are looking at. And UK is a key example of why we need to move out from that model of being silo oriented and saying, you know what, I just do immigration. Because yes, the amount of uncertainties that are existing in UK are just tremendous, as both Gagan and Kiran pointed out. The IT industry in India is the soft target. Okay, the UK has its compulsions on not being able to target, let me call it family-based migration, and not right now in a position to target also EU nationals, because they also need the EU for their long-term survival. But then when you look at an EU national, it is, okay, once Brexit happens, what happens to this EU national? Because that was a key issue and question which most of the EU nationals who were in UK at the time, the Brexit vote completed, were asking, and there were no clear-cut answers which were available. So there's a bigger uncertainty which exists over there. So going forward, the strategy obviously has to be a combination of having resources from India move over, localization, making sure that you increase your base of local employees, which again comes with its own set of challenges, and a combination of and if local talent is not available that easily, how are you able to augment it by EU nationals? And then yes, you have to take this as it unfolds in the coming months, and constantly look at fine tuning your strategy out to come up with what would be a right balance of resources from India, local resources, and resources from EU. But that's how the solution for the UK problem because of Brexit is going to come, and it's going to be a constant learning thing, which you have to keep making sure that periodically you relook it and you fine tune it till you get the right balance.
Thank you. The another question that I had for both of you was, Mac categorically made a recommendation that there should be more evidence with accompanying applications for ICT going on forward. Have you seen a demand for more paperwork, RFEs as we call them in US, that you've received from the UK High Commissions asking for more paperwork and evidence on how this guy is specialist? Because we've never heard that happen in UK.
So I'll take that.
Sure.
We haven't yet seen that, Gagan. I remember, yeah, one of the points was to make it more quantitative in terms of how do you feel that, how do you assume that this person is specialized knowledge. But we haven't seen any clarification being sought for. But if somebody, I mean, a lot of people would have seen the COS application and also the WAF application. It really would be surprising that you already have a 15-page document and you're adding one more into that. But yeah, as of now, we've not seen that. But if it comes back, then we'll also fall into the same bucket of what Canada or L1 does, that you don't know how it is adjudicated, but they want everything to be told to them.
Yes, so even we've not seen any perceptible change in the stand of the consulate so far. And as again Kiran was saying, if that happens, they're going to just join the gang of US and UK, where they bring in so much ambiguity into the process